Major League Journeymen, week 2 of Major League Soccer action at its best. On Sunday night, we saw Miami minus Messi, and boy, did they deliver. We got some opinions. We also got some teams at the top of the heap and some teams at the bottom. Let's jump in. Major League Journeymen, we got Dax McCarty in the house. We got Alan Gordon in the house. We got me, Daniel Charles Gargan, behind the proverbial mic, offering just a little bit of balance in between these two handsome gentlemen. Week 2 MLS. For me, a little underwhelming coming off of opening weekend. However, I think that there are some storylines already emerging, and I want to start with Sunday Night Soccer. First, I love it. I am thrilled about it. I couldn't be more effusive in my praise of us, of the league going back to this time slot and giving us a game to turn on to. Just personally, I talked about Miami being on the screen with my kids as we were making dinner at 3 o'clock, and all 3 out of 4 of them went directly upstairs, got their Miami Messi jerseys on, and came back downstairs and asked for the next 3 hours when the game was going to start. That's huge. That's awesome. Grassroots stuff that I could not be more excited about, because otherwise, you know, we're turning some other game on. So for them to be excited about MLS, granted, they're connected to it maybe in a different way. It is special. And I think that having a little bit of that at the end of the weekend was massive. And then to take it one step further, the game, which showcased, I think, a phenomenal team and a team that is really not very good and looks like there could be in some trouble here. It was fun to watch. So I wanted to throw to you guys, Gordo, can you start? And first, just tell me, we've debated on this year being Miami's year. From what you've seen in the 2 weeks of just their league games, granted, half of them have been played without Messi last night. Are they far and away the best team in this league?
I haven't seen anybody better. Last night was a super impressive performance from that team, and we can talk about. And it's not just the same crew. I mean, I think I'll go through them. Jordi Alba, the way that he's buzzing around the field is phenomenal. It is literally phenomenal. It's super fun to watch. He could be the best. I mean, he's arguably the best left back in the league. I don't see anybody that's doing what he's doing. He's a playmaker from the left back position. He's still running down the wing as hard as ever. Busquets is always just such a magician in there. And let's just talk about Luis Suarez and what
can we please
is doing.
Dude.
What is he doing? I mean, he's unbelievable, dude. He's unbelievable. The way that he gets the ball in open space, him and Busquets are on the same page. He takes a look against 2 young center backs. He goes right after him and he buries it, plus 2 assists. I mean, the guy is still a handful.
I think 3 assists, but personally.
Did he get credit for that
I think
one?
I don't know. It depends. I don't think MLS is giving him credit because it took a little deflection off the defender, but I think he should.
Deserved for creation of the play, but probably didn't get it technically. Absolutely insane, and I'm glad you brought him up, Gordo.
That's it.
Can you just talk about Suarez, because you're a striker, you're a former striker, you're still a striker in your mind. The opening week last year when we saw Luis Suarez play and how he was limping around, and we were worried about him getting to week 3 all in one piece without duct tape. And now what we're seeing, which that goal that you referenced in the explosion from the top of the 18-yard box, are we watching like a renaissance of this guy? Is this sustainable? What are your thoughts there?
I mean, that's a tough question to ask. You know, is it sustainable with a guy that's 38 and he's got, I mean, documented.
That's why he asked the question.
Yeah, right. But I mean, it's the hard part for me is you don't have Campana anymore to come in and give this guy minutes. So he's got to have to play a lot of minutes. These guys, they said it on the broadcast last night, how much these guys enjoy playing the game. Like
playing soccer, right?
They love playing soccer. They
God.
love it. I don't know if they like training anymore. They probably don't, but they love games. They had 4 games in 12 days. They still play with such passion. Suarez gets on and does an interview in English, which was really classy
Super
from
impressive.
him last night and really like respectful of the league. And so I know these guys want to do big things, and we'll just have to see. But he's going to give everything, man. He's going to give everything. I think he'll be fit throughout the year, and they are going to be true contenders.
Dex, you still have Busquets sitting in front of the back line. You still have Jordi Alba, who leaves whenever he feels like leaving. But my impression of this Miami team is actually that their defense was 9,000 times better than it was last year. What's sticking out for either their shape or just the way that they're operating that tells you the same thing?
Well, first of all, this is the longest I think I've ever gone to start an episode without saying pretty much anything. So
Good for you.
kudos
We're
to
working
me.
on it. We're working
Kudos to
on
me.
it.
That means
Pat myself on the back.
that means we
Kudos to me.
still have 500 listeners that would have already checked out.
Hey, you know what it means? It means that I'm growing. I'm growing. Being patient. I'm letting my co-hosts and coworkers speak. Listen, I want to hit on a few things, and I'll try to be concise. Okay, Dan, I couldn't agree more. Pulling back the curtain a little bit about Sunday Night Soccer, it's a big deal. The league really cares about this, and they are putting the full force of their power and their investment behind this production, and it feels like a big time production. And to be involved in it is awesome. I am super grateful because the league needs this. People are crying out for a game like this over the weekend because you have all the games on a Saturday and you're left wanting more on a Sunday, and it's absolutely phenomenal. You have Michele Giannone and Andrew Wiebe, on the ground interacting with the fans, pulling back the curtain on what happens at these tailgates, getting pitch side hits with coaches. It's fantastic, man. It feels not close to the stratosphere of what we're doing what they're doing in the NFL, but like, hey, we're taking baby steps, and this is such a great step in the right direction. So agreed. As far as the game goes, listen, this Inter Miami team, I'll fully accept that I may have to eat crow later this year. They just look dominant, man. They just look like far and away the best and deepest team in the league. And Sasha Kljestan, he argued this last year, and to a certain extent, so did I. The reason why Messi, in my opinion, the only reason you could have come up with to say he didn't deserve the MVP was because he was injured and because he didn't play in that many games, and his numbers were still ridiculous. But when he didn't play, this Inter Miami team was still dominant. They were still dominant, and it is because the roster they put together is insane. The depth that they have is crazy. Luis Suarez, for me, is the story from last night. The guy is essentially limping around the field on one leg and just making a mockery of backlines. It was a masterclass, and it wasn't just the fact that he scored a great goal at the end of the game, which, listen, as a defensive midfielder, it makes me sick to my stomach that the ocean of space that you leave in the middle of the field with Busquets on the ball. I mean, come on, Houston, what are we doing, guys? And I know Ben Olsen will be furious about that performance because anyone can lose to Inter Miami 4-1, but to do it in the way that they did it is to me unacceptable. And Ben, they just lacked desire and fight and aggression against an Inter Miami team that proved last year defensively they were frail. So listen, but that's Houston. I don't think they're the story. For me, the story is, okay, yes, Suarez, he's been fantastic. I'm not going to straddle the fence like Gordo. He's not going to be able to sustain this. The only good point Gordo made was about Campana. They do not have a backup striker. Now,
Which is a great point.
Of course, Mascherano can mix and match. For me, the story is, okay, Luis Suarez was brilliant, and when Messi's not there, I think Luis Suarez grows a little bit. I think he takes a little bit more on his shoulders, and you actually see him take a little bit more leadership. But the story for me is the young kids, Kramaski, Bright, Allende, and Segovia. This team sold Diego Gomez to the Premier League for $15 million, and it looks like they replaced him with a better player in Segovia. Ridiculous. Allende, not playing in La Liga. I'll just come over here to Inter Miami to play with Messi. He's 26 years old, in his prime.
What a great sales pitch, though, to be able to go out and get players to come and play with Messi.
This is the point, though. No other team in league history, with the exception of maybe the LA Galaxy, can sell a young player like this, and especially a young South American player. Segovia, would he have come to Inter Miami if Messi wasn't there? Nope. He's too good. He really is. And I think the league is doing a better job of turning into a proving ground for young players to prove themselves, and you will get sold if you play well. But Segovia wants to come over and play with Messi, and he's already got a connection with him. It's just you lose Campana, you lose Rojas, you lose Diego Gomez. Julian Gressel is out in the Bahamas somewhere. He's basically shunned from playing, and I'm not really sure why. And they just keep reloading. It's just crazy the depth that this team has. They are far and away the best team in the league right now. I don't see, and look, I'm going to contradict myself. I don't see how they don't win the Supporter Shield and maybe even break the points record again.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you said a lot there, Dax. I don't know if I completely agree just with the statement about clubs not being able to bring in talent. But I do think that you're spot on with Miami.
I did not say that. I said Segovia probably doesn't come to MLS without Messi.
I agree. But there are clubs that are bringing in players of his talent level and have done that. Atlanta, one of your former clubs, being one of the biggest ones in being able to acquire talent. But my point was, the marketing pitch makes it so much easier, and you'd have to think that even whatever they're acquiring him for is much less and much more valuable in terms of, hey, come and play in the States, and you get to play with Messi and the eyeballs that are around you. Pretty insane.
Really quick point before we move on. I don't know if you guys saw this, but Michele Giannone had a chat with Javier Mascherano and told a really cool story about Segovia. Javier Mascherano was the coach of the Argentinian under-23s before he took the Inter Miami job. Mm-hmm. He played against the Venezuelan under-23s, and he said that this kid Segovia just tormented his team, was just so good. So when he got the job at Inter Miami, he said, we need to go sign this player right now. Mm-hmm. It's just fantastic. It's just cool, a cool little nugget of a behind-the-scenes of, like, are you able to recruit this guy without Messi and Mascherano, and without Mascherano going and being like, look, this kid is an unheralded player, playing in the Venezuelan league for the U23s. Yeah, he was obviously talented, but like, that's cool, man. You have a coach who just has so much pull and a player that has so much pull. Hey, he played well against me. Go sign him. Fantastic.
You know one point about why the Suarez thing is not as big as people think? If he does not, or the way that they're going to get him rest, I can see them doing the old Barcelona thing. Remember when Barcelona used to play without a 9? They have the players, to your point, all these young players, and they were super impressive. I'm not going to be able to recite their names as well as you are, but I could see they have the talent pool in the middle to slide somebody up, and they're all smart enough players that they could play, like, without little man soccer, I guess.
Totally.
Dax, you did answer 9 questions, and none of them were the actual question that I asked you, which was concise, though. Their back line, I think, is what is allowing some of the points that you made to really kind of feel a bit more free. They are more talented across the back.
Let me push back on you a little bit. Yes, okay. I think they're better. I think they're better in the back, but if you saw week 1 against NYCFC, the goal they concede on the set piece is embarrassing. They leave a guy wide open right outside the 6-yard box. So I still think this Houston Dynamo team, they're not good, okay? And I think Ben Olsen would readily admit that they are multiple pieces away from being a contender again. You lose Carrasquilla, you lose you lose Hector Herrera, you still have Enali and Quinones out. I mean, this is a team, I hate talking about the injuries, but honestly, the amount of injuries that I've seen early in the season that teams are dealing with in MLS, you can't help but talk about it, because if these guys were back, the team would be better, but they're not, so Houston doesn't look good. But this Inter Miami team, I think they're a different team with Ian Frey on the field. I think he's a better player than their fullback Wygant. And I think if Ian Frey can stay healthy and you put him at right back, you have Jordi Alba at left back, you have a couple of new players that they signed, the guy Maxi Falcone, David Martinez, Lujan. Like, they are better in the back theoretically, but I'll be curious to see when they play better teams if that back line can hold up in transition. But yes, Dan, they are better in the back.
Is that Falcone guy the USL Player of the Year? Or or wherever he was from left back?
No.
He's good too.
Are you talking about Noah Allen?
Yeah.
You're talking about Noah Allen, who got the armband last night. Another young player, 20 years old.
Very good player.
Busquets gave him the armband last night, and that's what I'm saying. Your point is valid, Dax. They're not a polished product, but just watching them last night versus watching them last year,
they're better than last year in the back, no question.
Much improved. And when you have the firepower on the field that you do, at least just having somewhat of an improved security blanket, my goodness, it takes so much pressure off your team. They were fantastic for me last night. Now, here's the one thing that I want to ask. I walked away from that game watching the end of the game, the close of the game, in referee giving out a red card, and watched Jordi Alba go and give the back of the neck slap to another guy. For me, as a player, if I'm still in that league, my dissatisfaction, anger, just genuine competitive juice is going and has started going through the roof to be anxiously anticipating the moment when I get to play these guys. And I'm not playing them. I have to think that the overall populace in this league has to be feeling at least somewhat comparable. And I think that, and maybe I'm wrong here, but I'd be circling calendar dates on when we are going to see Jordi Alba on the field and when I'm going to see Messi, because as good as they are, they're still 38 years old. And there are other teams in this league that are very good. And if you continue to stack chips on shoulders within players in this league, I don't think it will end well for Miami. And this is a very early take, very early hot take. But I want to know from your perspective, Dax, if the conversations within that office, within that MLS HQ, are seeing similar things.
I don't think so. That's not the conversation, but from a former player's perspective, and I would hit on two things. First thing is, you guys played for a dynasty. You guys know how it is. Every time you stepped on the field, you had a target on your back, and you always got team's best. And even though they gave their best against you guys, you were too good, and it didn't matter. Now, you guys had, I would say, probably players that didn't push the envelope as much as this Inter Miami team does. But then again, I have experienced it to a certain extent with the New York Red Bulls and the teams that we had in the regular season. I'm not going to touch on the playoffs. I don't want to get sad. But in the regular season, we were far and away the best team in the league for a number of years. Not far and away, but we were. We had a target on our back. We had a million rivalries with the New England Revolution, with DC United, with NYCFC, with Philly. We had a rivalry with everyone to a certain extent, and we knew every time we stepped on the field, we had a target on our back. I think that these guys have a target on their back because of how good they are, but also, yeah, they are. I'm telling you, they toe the line between passion and petulance. And Messi has shown this. Jordi Alba has shown this. Suarez has shown this. I think Brad Guzan is still pulling himself out of the net. They just have. And especially now with Javier Mascherano as their coach, I don't see that getting any better. If anything, I see it getting even more pronounced.
Gordo, have you seen this? Because I know your DNA and it's comparable to mine. How do you feel like this thing ends for Miami? Because I don't think it's going to end well. I was a part of those teams, at least some of them that Dax was referencing. We were always competitive. At no point in time did we disparage our opponent. And I feel like this group is turning into one of the more disrespectful groups that I've seen in a long time, regardless of what they say in the post-game interview, which that's great. Luis Suarez knows he's got a lot of eyes on him and knows that he's got a brand to build in this country if he wants it. But we also know that he bites people and he stomps on people's toes, and he is who he has been. Do you feel like at some point this will turn for them, Gordo?
I noticed it, when I was watching last night as well. And the one thing that I'm taking away from it, because I don't like that look, and I think you explained it perfectly, which I probably wouldn't have taken that. Like, you want to play these guys, you want to compete against them. What I took away is I think these guys are noticeably disappointed in this season. Like, I don't think their fire has ever been as deep. I think they're that disappointed that they got knocked out in the playoffs first round last year. And they are on a mission, and they are going to tell everyone that they're not messing around. Jordi Alba's over there. He's getting into it with people. He's doing this one, and he's slapping people. You're getting red cards after. Messi did what he did last week. They are on a mission, and I think that's a dangerous thing for everybody else in the entire league. I don't think it's necessarily something that we haven't seen before. I don't think the Galaxy team that we were a part of, we didn't have that, right? We were a different type of team. But think about like the Seattle team with Dempsey and Alonso.
Alonso.
They were in your face all the time, and I hated them with a passion. I mean, my kids were not even allowed to say Seattle anything when I was playing, and they knew it because I hated them that much. But I don't think they're unapologetic about it. I think Miami's going to continue to do the same thing, and they as long as they come out and play like they did last night, I don't think they're concerned about who they piss off, and they're going to keep doing what they're going to do. So you're going to see a lot more of it this season.
I love it. I love it. And I think that there will be some real rivalries because Miami is good, man. They're very good. They are beyond very good. But there's also teams in this league that are legit. And Mascherano is still a young coach, and Messi clearly can get agitated. I think if anything I'm learning about Messi is that he's shown that his skin maybe isn't as thick as it always has been. Maybe that's the gray hairs in him coming out
because of the great points that I made last week.
Incredible points. We could review them. We don't have enough time, but
we don't.
Unbelievable assessment out of you, Dax. But it is pretty special to see what I think you are both alluding to, which is this is going to be must-see TV. It's going to be must-see TV all season long. I was thinking about the bad boys, Detroit Pistons, when they just did what they did and they were that good and they threw it in your face. I'm interested to see who rises up out of the rest of the league. Like, who is going to counter that? Who's going to balance this out? Because for me, I think they're going to be the bad boys of the league. And with the pink and the black and just the way that they're operating, man,
I would say Atlanta United, but I'm not there anymore. So
Atlanta United. That's a good segue. Let's jump into Atlanta United because they fall back and maybe come back down to earth. Did they come back down to earth for you, Dax? I think we had talked about how exciting and how high their ceiling potentially is, and then they go in to Charlotte and lay an egg.
Yeah, a little concerning. I got to be honest. They've played 2 games. So, Gordo, quick math. 2 games. How many halves of soccer is that? Quick.
4.
Yes, buddy. Look at you. 4 halves of soccer, 2 first halves. Excellent. They look like one of the top 3-4 teams in the league, even against Charlotte when they didn't score. And then 2 second halves, they look extremely mediocre, and CF Montreal should have tied the game, and they were lucky to get out with a draw at home. And then in Charlotte, they got punished. And listen, this team spent a ton of money. And if you guys go through the roster designations, they have on their roster 4 designated players, one of whom is being paid for.
Borrowed.
Right. But DC United's paying him to play for Atlanta United. So they have 4 DPs, and they have 8 TAM players. That is what we call a loaded roster. That's what we call all in, okay? So when you go all in, and even though it's a pretty new team with some pretty new pieces, there are no excuses. There aren't. And the game against Charlotte, they looked really good in the first half, but they didn't punish Charlotte. And then Dean Smith, I don't know what he said at halftime. I don't know what he gave Zaha at halftime, but Charlotte came out and they were the better team. And they scored opportunistic goals, and they hit this Atlanta backline in transition. And we talk about the attack a lot. And listen, fantastic performance in the first game against CF Montreal, but against Charlotte, a little underwhelming. And then if this attack is underwhelming and doesn't score goals, then this backline has not proven yet to me that they are able to keep shutouts. So little bit of an issue. I think Atlanta United's going to be fine.
Minor issue.
I think that Dyla is a good coach, and I think he will be able to sort it out. But they're struggling right now, and I don't want to harp on injuries, but both their starting fullbacks are injured, and then the third their essential Swiss Army knife, Ronald Hernandez, who fills in at either fullback role, gets injured. So look, they've got to work out some things, but no one cares. No one cares about who you're missing. You're Atlanta United. You have to go win games.
Yep, that leash gets shorter and shorter the more you spend, and they have spent a lot, to your point. You did talk about 2 games, right? We are 2 games in.
Small sample size. I get
small sample size.
But it's a small sample size for everyone in the league.
It is a small sample size. You're right.
We're going to judge Atlanta differently than we're going to judge Montreal.
Correct.
It has to happen.
Correct. And Atlanta, after 2 weeks, is not one of the teams that is on 6 points, right? There are 5 teams that are on 6 points. So 2 wins out of the possible 2. 2 for 2. Gordo, for my money, I do owe my hometown an apology of Philadelphia and the Philadelphia Union, who look absolutely unstoppable. Vancouver Whitecaps, San Jose Earthquakes, Philadelphia Union, LAFC, and the Columbus Crew, 6 points out of a possible 6 points. Anybody else in that group stand out for you outside of Philly? We'll touch on Philly. Of the other 4, Vancouver, San Jose, LAFC, Columbus, who's the next? Who's the next at that top tier after 2 weeks?
I just think the most impressive, if we talk about the worst team in the league last year, San Jose Earthquakes, and how they've started the season, you got to pick them. Do we know what's going to happen or where they're going to go? But at week 2, 4 halves, that's a team that I'm really excited about. I think these 2 guys we talked about last week, their 2 guys didn't get on. Their 2 blockbuster moves. The 2 guys up top, Arango and Martinez, they didn't score. Yet they still won the game, and then they both get goals. They look super dangerous. They look like they're having a ton of fun. The vibes are in. They add, right? The vibe, and that's what Bruce does,
vibes, baby. They look like they're having fun.
Yeah, it's a locker room thing. I've been in the locker room with Bruce. I think all of us have, and that's what he wants. He wants his team to be jiving, and they seem to be jiving. I'm gonna tune into that team here coming up.
The vibes around that group, you're spot on. I mean, Joseph celebrating with Arango was a big deal. For me, I was like,
a little dance?
Is that actually happening right now? Because if that is happening, this could be in a very good place and trending in a really good direction. I immediately thought of a worry and a positive here. The positive is that that's exactly who Bruce wants. He wants his group to be feeling like that, like you said. The alternative there is Bruce's kind of like optimistic arrogance that he has, that just unbridled, this is going to happen. Does it work with this group, and how long does it last? Are they good enough to be 6 point, top of the heap, or have they gotten the benefit of I think some ideal scheduling in a poor Kansas City team and a Salt Lake team that had already played a ton of games?
Heavily rotated Salt Lake team.
Yep.
Taking my point away, but yes, good point, Dan. Go ahead, Gargs.
No, you hit on it, because I think that it is.
Well, I was just going to say that the answer to this question is pretty easy, and I'll go through all 4 of the rest of these teams. I'm very impressed with all 5 teams. I think they are deservedly on 6 points. San Jose, Vancouver, very, very fortunate scheduling. Both of them played against a team that got a red card in the first 10 minutes of their game. So a little bit of help there.
Yeah.
But still, you can only play the teams in front of you, fine. And I got crap for this on MLS Wrap Up from Sash and BWP. San Jose, I gave them a B- right now, because they have not played anyone, and obviously it's an A++ compared to last year. But I want to see them beat a good team. I want to see them beat a contender, because I don't trust this backline. I still have questions. So for me, similar vibes for Vancouver, but full credit. They have 6 points. They've started the season well. The answer to this question initially is Columbus, by far and away the most impressive for me. They lose great players. Wilfred Nancy, the best coach in the league this year, the best coach in the league last year. Dan. Listen, they lose the second best player in MLS.
See, it's early.
Well, it is early. Hey, guess what? It's early for all the teams, but you still have to react, okay?
That's
and I'm
right.
doing a really good job of not straddling the fence this year. Like Gordo.
I like that.
Like Gordo's
I like that.
Gordo's not doing a good job of that. But I digress. Columbus, they pump Chicago at home. They look really dangerous, super organized defensively, high press, score goals. And then they go on the road and they grind one out against New England. They can beat you pretty. They can beat you ugly. Very impressive. LAFC, I have concerns about LAFC. Yes, their backline is great, but they have not looked good.
No.
They've won 2 home games, 1-0 against opponents that we are expecting them to dominate. I don't know. This team, it's just, they're going to be there at the end of the season, but they just aren't fun to watch, and they should be. They have some of the best players and most talented players in the league, and every time I watch them play, I'm just like, this team isn't fun to watch. So, boom.
Thank you for saying that, because that's what I was going to say. You said all 5 teams you liked, and then you came back. But I was going to say, I've watched LAFC, and they are not impressive. Giroud looks like he's never never played soccer before. Because
that's a take. I love it.
Because
I got it out of him, Gargs.
Because we talked about the vibes with San Jose. Top players gotta know how to play with each other. Bouanga has no interest. He's got one thing on his mind. He always has, and that's why he's great. He's got no interest in playing with Giroud. And
Bouanga's there's one ball on the field, and it's
Bouanga's got no interest in playing with anyone.
He don't want to play with anybody.
They do not have good vibes, and I don't like the way what they're doing. They're a counter team, and Giroud is not a counter guy. Only Bouanga is. So they're basing their whole system on one guy, and Giroud does not fit in, and it's not great for him.
So how does Ty Baribo fit when they move him? Do you see any of this happening? Because we haven't touched on, guys. We've scratched the surface in terms of this inter-league transfer, right? But we really haven't talked about what this could potentially open up, which is going to get players within a season and starting to maybe shift some of the disparity within the league in an LAFC going and buying a Ty Baribo from the Philadelphia Union and capitalizing on that.
Ain't gonna happen
at all. That's
no.
it. Blanket.
Listen, hey, I'm not saying he's as good as Ty Baribo, but Jeremy Abobasi is a very good player, and he should be the starting striker at this point for LAFC.
Okay, that could be fair. Do you say, is it specific just to Ty Baribo moving to LAFC, or you're saying you don't think these inter club transfers or inter league transfers are going to happen more often?
I don't think they're going to happen in season that often.
Really? Okay.
Yes. In season, no. And by the way, Ty Baribo, if this transfer was to happen in some fantasy world, he'd be worth $50 million. The guy's on pace for 85 goals right now. All right.
Okay.
You're not getting him.
Dude,
for
Gordo was on pace for 85 goals after his first 2 preseason games, but we all know how that ends up, right?
I should be in the preseason Hall of Fame. I'm documented saying that.
You should be in the preseason Hall of Fame. Chris Wondolowski in the Reserve League Hall of Fame.
Yes.
And the MLS Hall of Fame. Look, Philly, I'm raising my hand here. I'm a humble guy. More than happy to say when I'm wrong. It looks 2-game sample size. I'm wrong. I'm eating some crow about Philly. I did not think they were going to be able to replace. I thought there would be a lull after Jim Curtin. I thought they wouldn't be able to replace Jack McGlynn in midfield, Jose Martinez in midfield. There are 2 new midfielders. We're going to talk about their front 4 who've been insanely good. The 2 midfielders that have come in, Jean-Jacques and Lukic, both look the part. They both look like very high-level MLS players. They do the job in front of that back line, who still looks a little bit leaky, and Andre Blake looks a little shaky still for me. But this front 4 is crazy good, okay? You have Gazdag playing in a different role as kind of an interior left winger who just goes and finds the game. You have Quinn Sullivan, who looks like he can be sold for an 8-figure transfer fee in the summer. And then you have Baribo, who's the hottest striker in the league, and Ura, who, he's not great, but he fits into what they want to do. And Bradley Carnell. Tons of credit to Bradley Carnell. But we've seen this before, Dan, and you know where I'm going to go with this. St. Louis, a couple years ago, Bradley Carnell, first in the West, absolutely flying. And then look what happens. They have a little bit of a drop off. This high pressing system, we know how it can wear on the legs.
You took my question, Dax, and I wanted to hear specifically from you because you're intimately connected to this. I am not a believer in this system. I am diametrically opposed to it. I love when teams can do it, and Philly, what they've done in the first 2 games is they have executed it at probably the best level that you can execute it at. I still don't think it's sustainable. I don't
to that
believe
point,
it.
Dan, let me interrupt you. To that point, they have, how about this for the stat nerds, all right? I'm really diving into this analyst role. They have 11 shots on target.
Right.
8 goals.
Right. Come on.
By the way, Ty Baribo, Alan Gordon range, every single goal he scored is from inside 10 yards, all right?
Yep.
They're basically tapping. And look, he has to make the runs. If you guys have seen their 8 goals, they all look.
His runs are phenomenal.
Service from out wide, beautiful crosses into the box, Baribo, near post, goal. And look, I don't think it's sustainable, but this team is for real. This is a very good team. I didn't have them making the playoffs. I'm wrong. I'll admit that. They are going to make the playoffs, and they will absolutely have a say potentially in the top 4.
Yeah, I think that, like I said, I owe the Union an apology because I think I was wrong. And maybe what needed to happen was Jim needed to be removed so that you could actually move on from Jack McGlynn and you could bring Baribo in and give him the keys. Those were 2 things that I think was really holding this group back because Baribo was around. He's been around, but him and Jim did not see eye to eye and they didn't, whatever it was, it wasn't working. And then to be fair, I think McGlynn was an albatross. He's a good player, but he didn't fit in their system.
Doesn't fit what they want to do.
He held a lot of that back, but it was also the balance of that was you watch him play and you'd be like, oh man, that'd be fun to build off of, but it didn't fit, and it didn't fit the Union, and they did go in there and they got very German on it and said, let's take all the emotion out of this and just slash it out and go forward, and they've done it. I don't know how long it lasts, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is a long year for them or a short year for them, however you want to look at it. But it's the right start, and that's for damn sure because their fans have quickly forgotten all the emotion of last year. You got Bedoya sitting on the bench, but you kept them around. You've moved forward, and you're producing. They're pumped.
Let me hit on one thing really fast. You know what I love about Bradley Carnell? If you guys watched that Cincinnati game, they were up 3-1. Cincinnati just had an insane chance. Kevin Denke, who's the striker for Cincinnati, who's an absolute stud, missed a sitter. It's the miss of the season so far. But that game very easily could have been 3-2, and Cincinnati was pouring on the pressure. You know what Bradley Carnell did? He threw on 15-year-old Kevin Sullivan. Not when the game was easy, but when the game was hard. I mean, that's a lot of trust in a young guy. I love that from Bradley Carnell. I'm curious to see how he navigates the summer because I think it's going to be difficult to sustain the way they play. But Philly for me is the story of the season so far, the way that they're finishing, how good they look. They beat a pretty good Orlando team in Orlando, and then they just destroyed this, who I think is a Supporter Shield favorite in Cincinnati. Man, what a great start for Philly.
I'll counter that just a touch because I learned a little bit about Cincinnati last night, and I'm a little concerned about them. I was super high on them. I was not very high on their midfield in watching them play against Philly.
They were missing 3 of their best players. I just have to throw it out there. When they get Matt Miazga back, when Pavel Buka starts, and when Luca Orejano comes back, they are going to be dominant.
Those are 3 integral pieces. I was a little concerned just in terms of the depth because we've talked about this, so I don't want to recover it, but injuries happen for everybody, and it's how you deal with it. So that was a little concerning for me. There are, however, 4 clubs that haven't picked up a point in 2 games. Montreal, our LA Galaxy, Gordo, who I do like their purple uniforms, just going to put that out in the ether. Sporting Kansas City, and Houston. I'm going to take the Galaxy off the board because they are returning champs. There is a hangover that you maybe have earned. They're also an incredible amount of their depth and their starters that are not on the field, so they're going to have to figure that out. Of Montreal, Sporting Kansas City, and Houston, who is accurately pegged as 3 of or one of the worst clubs for this year? Who are you not willing to bet on to pull themselves out of this hole?
I mean, I would say Houston, but we already talked about them, and Dax gave all the reasons, all the personnel problems that they have. So I think they're going to have a really, really tough year. But I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to Sporting Kansas City. I think they are in a place where there's got to be some real questions asked about Peter Vermes. We've been asking about this. We all respect him. We all respect what he's done for this club. But I think, similar to the Jim Curtin thing, maybe it's time.
Does the voice get stale?
Yeah, the voice is. It looks like it's gotten stale, and so I'm not going to be able to give you all the details and all that stuff. But they look like they need a change. That's all I'll say. And I think they're going to have a really rough year.
Let me dive into that a little bit more, because that is the correct answer, Gordo. They were up a man they were down 2-1 at home to the San Jose Earthquakes team, up a man for 40 minutes. And on MLS 360, obviously games jump around from game to game. When there's a good game happening, we might stay on that for a few more minutes. And when there's great chances happening, and we didn't see hardly any of the Sporting Kansas City game because they were up a man for 40 minutes and created next to nothing. Put almost no pressure on the San Jose backline. I don't see, you do a great thing, you do a great bit of business. You go get a phenomenal striker in Dejan Joveljic. How is he supposed to score goals? He is not a guy who's going to create his own chances, create his own shot. He needs service. He was fantastic for an LA Galaxy team who had $60 million worth of talent around him, and he is going to score. That's what we talked about. He does not have that in Kansas City. What is the vision? They didn't improve the back line. The midfield is so underwhelming. This Kansas City team, I just don't get it. And you can look at Peter. Is his voice getting stale? I still think he's a legend in this game and in this league. I don't know. Is the front office doing him no favors? Why have they not added better pieces?
He is the front office, isn't he?
Why have they not added better pieces? Manu Garcia, the new midfielder, he looks decent. He looks pretty good. But is he a game changer? I don't know. I mean, the Sporting Kansas City team for me is the clear answer. CF Montreal, they just have a lack of talent. I think they're well coached. I really like Laurent Courtois.
Canadian.
I think that they have a really good coach and they have a good system and a good way of playing. But you guys know as well as I do that top end talent always wins games. They don't have it. And then with Houston, I think once they get to the summer and they get some of these pieces back, I think that they will make a little run here. But I think it's realistic to wonder if they're just going to have a very bad season. Kansas City's the answer.
Yeah, I would agree with both of you. Kansas City is the answer. Kansas City, I don't see them pulling out of this. I don't know about Houston. Houston, it might just be tough vibes all year. They look like a team that is going to be kind of in this like just up and down middle of the pack. They could pull out of it. They could actually just drop down further.
If you don't sign any attacking pieces for Houston, you get some of these injured players back. They could be much better, but they have to sign a center back. They have to sign a center back, or else they're in big trouble.
They're also a club that has shown, I think, that recently, as in the last couple of years, they are willing to spend. So I think that, Pat is I think pretty good at what he does, and has built at least a club and a team that are respectable at bare minimum on a consistent basis. And Ben's done a great job in there. So I would probably bet on Houston to pull out of this. Montreal is just baby Columbus Crew. You got Laurent Courtois, who I think is a good coach and comes from the Nancy tree. And then you also have Corey Ray as a young GM, first year in that seat. They will, I think that you got to give them a couple of years, but they're a young build right now. So you know what? You guys are right. You're both right. Well done. Major League Journeymen, that concludes our session for today. And I would say that out of 10, Gordo, 9, Dax, 8.9. Right there. Right on the cusp.
It's just because I know all the names and Gordo doesn't. That's why he got a higher grade than me.
You know what? No, it's actually because Gordo far outpaced his expectation on this episode. His expectation was like a 5 out of 10, and he nailed it. It was pretty good. Gordo, that's the trick. Set the bar low.
That's right.
He didn't butcher. Listen, you can't butcher any names if you don't know any names.
If you don't say any of them, that's right.
Kids, take your first date to McDonald's. Okay, but we ain't going to steak. All right, that's where you go. Only up from here, baby.
That's for year 26. All right, boys. Well done. We'll see you out there.